Okay. Folks, I wanted to talk to you about something incredibly serious that's going on in the courts. I'm going to talk really briefly about 3 cases and talk to you about why we are on full authoritarian dictator watch right now. It is just unbelievable what is going on in this country. Let's leave aside that a state court judge has been arrested and is being prosecuted, and a member of Congress was just charged. These are both the kinds of things that show just full-on authoritarianism. Even if there was guilt here, these are just such minor offenses, and it's only being done as a way to promote a sort of reign of terror. That term comes up in the French Revolution in connection with Robespierre, who was, in the name of public liberty, actually massacred thousands of people in a matter of just, a year. We don't have death happening yet, but we do have the kidnapping of people and storing them against all constitutional norms in a foreign prison. Here's what's going on. So let's just start in Houston. A federal judge has ordered that the government has to identify where the plaintiff is. A counsel is trying to figure out where his client is and trying to communicate with him. And the Houston judge has ordered the government to disclose where the person is and to make sure that defense counsel can speak to his client. That's just remarkable, that the lawyer does not even know where the person is. And the court says if for some reason the government is saying that they can't do this, they need to give him within 72 hours chapter and verse why they cannot do this. Second, in Maryland, there's a case where the pseudonym is Christian, where the district judge who was appointed by Donald Trump in his first term, Judge Susan Gallagher, has ordered that his return be facilitated and that the government has to make a call to El Salvador to get his return to this country. And that has been appealed, and that appeal has been rejected so far. And one of the things that the lawyers for Christian note is that after the litigation was brought, the government filed some document that they described as simply contrived for the purposes of litigation, saying that the Department of Justice has made a determination that this person is a danger to the community, but gives no facts. As the district judge says, the court of law is a place where evidence governs, and the Fourth Circuit rejected that document and said that the government's failure to address it was sort of a deafening silence. In other words, the plaintiff was saying this is just a contrived, made-up document with no evidence to support it. Why is that something that the courts are really on the lookout for? Well, then let's turn to Massachusetts. In the DVD case, again, that's another acronym, and there I'm just going to read to you for a moment. Here, the government, through a civil lawyer in the government, Mary Larakers, Larakers, a senior litigation counsel in the United States Department of Justice Civil Division. And let me just read it to you because it's remarkable. Defendants, that's the government, hereby advise the court of an error in the March 25th, 2025 declaration of Brian Ortega. The declaration represented, based on internal database information, that Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, that is ICE, quote, verbally asked OCG, that is one of the plaintiffs, if he was afraid of being returned to Mexico. At this time, OCG stated he was not afraid of returning to Mexico. In other words, this sworn statement was that there was no fear of prosecution or persecution if this person was to be returned to Mexico. And that was a sworn statement that was given to the court and relied on by the court. And this is what the government has now said. Defendants have relied on this declaration to make corresponding statements to the court. Upon further investigation, defendants cannot identify any officer who asked OCG whether he had a fear of return to Mexico. Let me just repeat that. Upon further investigation, defendants cannot identify any officer who asked OCG whether he had a fear of return to Mexico. But it goes on. Nor can defendants identify the officer who OCG states, quote, told him that he was being deported to Mexico, unquote. Accordingly, defendants submit the attached declaration correcting Mr. Ortega's March 25th, 2025 declaration. However, defendants maintain that, pursuant to OCG's own admission, he received notice of his removal to Mexico. Of course, that last statement, the notice of removal, that mere notice is not sufficient, depending on the language it was used in, how much time he was given, and what he understood his rights were. In other words, that alone is not going to carry the day, I would not think. But this is why you are seeing courts around the country appointed by people, including Donald Trump, pushing back. This is just remarkable. People being forcibly seized and removed from this country, and when they're called out, the government either doesn't respond or in some cases is given these kind of false claims that have to be corrected, as we just saw in the DVD case. Finally, in the Abrego Garcia case, of which there now appears to be a number of people like Abrego Garcia, such as Mr. Christian in the case before Susan Gallagher, there's an assertion by Marco Rubio of state secrets. I'm going to be talking about that with Mary McCord on our podcast, Main Justice, what that assertion means, and also just how facially thin that is. In other words, it doesn't give any details or facts. It's simply a way, I think, of just saying you can't look behind what we are telling you. But the track record here is that there is a lack of evidence and people are just being physically taken and removed. And even when it's in error, even when there's mistakes, even when there are false statements given to the court, there's no effort by this government to bring these people back. In addition, you now have a judge, as I mentioned, you have a member of Congress who are being prosecuted. We are in full authoritarian mode. This is a complete lack of due process. This is basically saying that the Constitution is a dead letter, that judges have no ability and should not be weighing in, and the government is resisting all of that. And obviously, defense counsel of any sort is anathema to this administration, CEG, what they're doing with law firms. So people should really be on high alert. I've touched on 3 cases to keep an eye out for. Unfortunately, I think there are going to be many, many more. And for those of you who think this isn't happening and this is time to wake up, because it is happening, and it is a time to make sure that you are using all peaceful, democratic ways of expressing your views to elected officials in terms of voting, in terms of, if you can, contributing your time or money. because this is not the country that I think that we should have and we're entitled to have. There's just way too many examples of authoritarian practices going on that if we don't wake up and do something about it, it really is going to be too late. Take care. Stay engaged.